On a gray winter morning in December 2009, in the small coastal town of Bandon, Oregon, a young woman named Jennifer Huston walked out of her family's modest blue house on Maple Street and never came back. Her husband reported her missing that evening. Her car was found days later, abandoned in a grocery store parking lot 14 miles away, keys still in the ignition, her purse on the passenger seat. There were no signs of struggle, no witnesses, no explanation. The community searched for weeks, combing through dense forests and rocky beaches, calling her name into the wind. But Jennifer Huston had simply vanished, as if the earth had opened and swallowed her whole. For 6 years her family waited. Her children grew older without answers. The case went cold, filed away in a drawer somewhere in the Coos County Sheriff's Office, another unsolved mystery in a town where the fog rolls in thick and the ocean keeps its secrets. And then in 2015, someone spoke. A single conversation changed everything, and what had been hidden for so long finally came into the light. The question that haunted Bandon for years was simple and terrible. What happened to Jennifer Huston? Bandon sits on the southern Oregon coast, a town of fewer than 3,000 people, where the Cockwell River meets the Pacific Ocean in a collision of current and tide. The landscape is rugged and beautiful, defined by towering sea stacks that rise from the water like ancient sentinels, their surfaces carved smooth by centuries of salt and wind. In winter, the town feels isolated. Rain falls in sheets that blur the horizon. The beaches are empty except for driftwood and kelp. Tourists disappear until summer, leaving behind a community of fishermen, retirees, and families who have lived here for generations. Everyone knows everyone. Secrets are hard to keep, and when they are kept, they tend to be the kind that matter. Jennifer Marie Huston was 38 years old in December 2009. She had lived in Bandon for most of her adult life, raising 2 children with her husband, Callan Huston, in a neighborhood where the houses were small and well kept, where children rode bicycles in the street and neighbors waved from their porches. Jennifer worked part-time at a local dentist's office, filing insurance claims and scheduling appointments. Those who knew her described her as quiet, organized, deeply devoted to her children. She kept the house immaculate. She volunteered at the elementary school. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays and baked cookies for bake sales and never missed a parent-teacher conference. Her daughter, Emily, was 11. Her son, Michael, was 9. They were normal children in a normal family, or so it seemed to anyone watching from the outside. Callan Huston was 42, a construction worker who had grown up in Bandon and never left. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and a quiet demeanor that some people found reassuring and others found hard to read. He worked irregular hours, depending on contracts and weather. In winter, when construction slowed, he spent more time at home fixing things around the house, watching television in the evenings. Neighbors said he was polite but distant. He did not attend community events. He did not linger in conversation. His life revolved around his family, his work, and little else. The morning of December 14, 2009, began like any other. Jennifer woke at 6:30 as she always did. She made coffee in the kitchen while the children slept. The house was warm, the furnace humming softly in the basement. Outside, the sky was overcast, the kind of flat gray that promised rain but had not yet delivered. Jennifer moved through her routine with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done the same thing 1,000 times before. She packed lunches for the children. She laid out their clothes on their beds. She stood at the kitchen window for a moment, looking out at the street, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. The neighborhood was still. A single streetlight flickered at the corner. Nothing seemed out of place. By 7:15, the children were awake. Jennifer made them breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, and sat with them at the table while they ate. Callan was already gone, out on a job in Cockwell, about 25 miles inland. He had left before dawn, as he often did. Jennifer drove the children to school at 8 o'clock, dropping them off at the front entrance of Bandon Elementary. Several parents remembered seeing her that morning. She waved. She smiled. She reminded Emily to turn in her permission slip for the upcoming field trip. Then she drove away, her silver Honda Accord disappearing down the street. That was the last confirmed sighting of Jennifer Huston. At approximately 10:30 that morning, Jennifer's supervisor at the dentist's office called her cell phone. Jennifer had been scheduled to work at 9 and she had not shown up. This was unusual. Jennifer was punctual, reliable, the kind of employee who called ahead if she was going to be even a few minutes late. The call went to voicemail. The supervisor tried again at 11. Again, voicemail. By noon, she was concerned enough to call Jennifer's home phone. No answer. She left a message. The hours passed. Jennifer did not call back. Callan Huston returned home that evening around 6 o'clock. He picked up the children from their after-school program as he often did when Jennifer was working. When they arrived at the house, Jennifer's car was not in the driveway. The house was empty. Callan called her cell phone. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. He checked the kitchen, the bedroom, the garage. Her purse was gone. Her coat was gone. There was no note, no indication of where she might have gone or when she might return. Callan made dinner for the children, macaroni and cheese from a box. He told them their mother was running errands. He waited. By 9 o'clock, Callan called the Coos County Sheriff's Office to report Jennifer missing. A deputy arrived at the house within 30 minutes. A young officer named Derek Paulson who took notes in a small spiral notebook while Callan stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Callan explained that Jennifer had left that morning to take the children to school and had not come home. He said she had been scheduled to work but had not shown up. He said this was not like her. Deputy Paulson asked if they had argued. Callan said no. Paulson asked if Jennifer had seemed upset or depressed. Callan said no. Paulson asked if there was anywhere she might have gone, friends or family she might be staying with. Callan said he did not know. He said she had no reason to leave. He said he was worried something had happened to her. A search began the following morning. Deputies canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen Jennifer. No one had. Her cell phone was traced to a location near the Safeway grocery store in Cockwell, but when deputies arrived, there was no sign of her or her car. The signal went dead shortly after. On December 16th, 2 days after Jennifer disappeared, a store employee found her silver Honda Accord in the far corner of the Safeway parking lot. The car was unlocked. The keys were in the ignition. Her purse was on the passenger seat, wallet intact, credit cards untouched. Her cell phone was wedged between the seat and the center console, battery dead. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, no fingerprints other than Jennifer's and those of her family. The car had been there for at least a day, maybe longer. No one had noticed. Investigators examined the vehicle carefully. The odometer showed Jennifer had driven approximately 32 miles since her last oil change, which had been logged 3 days earlier at a shop in Bandon. The distance from her home to the Safeway parking lot was roughly 14 miles. The math did not add up. Where had she gone before arriving at the store? Deputies checked surveillance footage from the Safeway. The cameras did not cover the far corner of the lot. There was no video of Jennifer or anyone else near the car. It was as if she had parked, walked away, and vanished. The search expanded. Volunteers from Bandon and surrounding communities joined law enforcement in scouring the area. They walked through forests and along the beaches. They searched abandoned buildings and checked with hospitals and shelters. Jennifer's photograph was distributed to media outlets across the state. Her family appeared on local news, pleading for information. Her parents drove down from Portland, their faces drawn and pale. They sat in the living room of the Blue House on Maple Street, holding hands, trying to understand what had happened to their daughter. The children were quiet, confused, asking questions no one could answer. Callan Huston cooperated with the investigation. He allowed deputies to search the house. He provided his phone records and his work schedule. He answered every question. But those who spoke with him noticed something unusual. He was calm, almost detached. He did not cry. He did not raise his voice. He did not seem frantic or desperate the way most people do when someone they love goes missing. When asked how he was holding up, he said he was fine. When asked if he thought Jennifer was alive, he said he did not know. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves. Something felt off. They could not name it, not yet, but it was there, a dissonance between what they were seeing and what they expected to see. Part 2. The investigation. The search for Jennifer Huston consumed Bandon. Volunteers organized into teams, each assigned a specific area to cover. They searched the forests along Highway 101, calling her name into the trees. They walked the beaches at low tide, scanning the rocks and tide pools. The Coast Guard sent boats to search the waters near the mouth of the Cockwell River. Divers checked the deeper channels. For 2 weeks, the town held its breath, hopping for a miracle, bracing for the worst. The community response was overwhelming. Local businesses donated food and supplies for the search teams. Churches held prayer vigils. A reward fund was established. Jennifer's face appeared on flyers stapled to telephone poles and taped to shop windows. But as the days passed without any sign of her, hope began to fade. The search teams grew smaller. The media coverage dwindled. By January, the investigation had narrowed its focus. Investigators were no longer looking for a missing woman. They were looking for a body. Detectives from the Coos County Sheriff's Office began to piece together Jennifer's final movements. They interviewed her coworkers, her friends, her neighbors. They built a timeline, marking every confirmed sighting, every phone call, every transaction. What they found was a life that appeared ordinary on the surface but contained small fractures, hairline cracks that suggested something underneath. Several people mentioned that Jennifer had seemed distracted in the weeks before she disappeared. She had missed a hair appointment. She had forgotten to return a library book. Small things, easily explained but taken together, they hinted at a mind preoccupied, a person carrying weight. Investigators also began to notice inconsistencies in Callan Huston's account. He had told deputies that he left for work before dawn on December 14th, around 5:30 in the morning. But when detectives checked with his employer, they learned that the job site in Cockwell had not opened until 8 o'clock that day due to weather delays. Callan's coworkers confirmed he had arrived around 8:15. Where had he been between 5:30 and 8:15? Callan said he had stopped for coffee and driven around, waiting for the site to open. He could not remember where he had stopped or what route he had taken. Detectives made notes. They also examined the mileage discrepancy. Jennifer's car had traveled 32 miles, but the distance from her home to the Safeway was only 14. Detectives retraced possible routes, accounting for detours and wrong turns. They could not reconcile the difference. Someone had driven that car somewhere else before it was abandoned. The question was who and where. Clear's throat. Physical evidence was scarce. There was no blood in the car, no weapon, no signs of violence. Cadaver dogs were brought in to search the Huston property. They alerted near the garage, but a subsequent excavation found nothing. Investigators searched the woods near the house, the barn behind the property, the crawl space under the porch. Nothing. It was as if Jennifer had simply ceased to exist. Detectives interviewed Callan multiple times. He remained cooperative but unemotional. When asked about his marriage, he said it was fine. When asked if he and Jennifer had fought, he said they disagreed sometimes, like any couple, but nothing serious. When asked if Jennifer had any reason to leave, he said no. His answers were consistent, almost rehearsed. One detective later wrote in his notes, "Subject maintains calm demeanor, no visible distress, answers questions without elaboration." Difficult to read. Those who knew Callan had mixed reactions. Some defended him. They said he was a quiet man, that he processed emotions internally, that grief looked different for everyone. Others were less certain. They remembered small things, the way he had not joined the search parties, the way he had gone back to work after only a week, the way he spoke about Jennifer in the past tense before anyone else did. These observations were subjective, easy to dismiss, but they accumulated in the minds of investigators like sediment in a river, layer upon layer, building towards something solid. By February 2010, the active search had ended. Jennifer Huston was officially classified as a missing person, her case file growing thicker with interviews and reports and photographs that led nowhere. Detectives continued to investigate, but without new evidence there was little they could do. The case went cold. The town moved on slowly, reluctantly. Jennifer's children returned to school. Her parents returned to Portland. Callan Huston remained in the blue house on Maple Street, alone with his silence. Part 3: The Silence. 3 months after Jennifer disappeared, Callan sold the house. He told neighbors he could not stay there anymore, that the memories were too painful. He moved with the children to a rental property in Coos Bay, about 25 miles north of Bandon. The new house was smaller, a 2-bedroom unit in a complex near the highway. The children shared a room. Callan worked when he could find jobs, though his reputation had suffered. People whispered. Contractors were reluctant to hire him. Money became tight. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, you understand the particular kind of torment that follows. It is not the same as grief. Grief is clean, or at least cleaner. It has a shape. It has stages, but doubt is shapeless. It lives in the space between what you know and what you feel, and it does not resolve. Emily and Michael Huston grew up in that space. They did not speak about their mother often. When they did, their father's face would close, his jaw tightening, his eyes going distant. They learned not to ask. By 2012, small cracks in the facade began to show. Emily, now 14, had nightmares. She woke screaming, though she could never remember what she had dreamed. She drew pictures in her notebooks at school, dark scribbles of houses and trees and figures that her teachers found unsettling. A school counselor reached out to Callan, suggesting Emily might benefit from therapy. Callan said he would think about it. He did not follow up. Michael, at 12, became withdrawn. He stopped playing with other children. He spent hours alone in his room, building elaborate structures out of Legos and then smashing them to pieces. When his teachers asked if he was okay, he said yes. When his father asked, he said nothing. The silence in the house grew heavier, a presence of its own, filling the rooms like smoke. Callan began dating in 2013. Her name was Rebecca Thorne, a waitress at a diner in Coos Bay. She was kind to the children, or tried to be, but they resisted. Emily refused to speak to her. Michael ignored her. Rebecca stayed anyway, moving into the house despite the tension, despite the way the children looked at her with something close to hatred. She told friends she believed Callan. She said he was a good man, that he had been through something terrible, that he deserved a second chance. Those friends were not so sure. The relationship between Callan and Rebecca was volatile. Neighbors heard arguments through the thin walls, voices rising and falling late into the night. Rebecca later told investigators that Callan drank more than she had realized at first. He became angry when he drank, not violent but cold, withdrawn, saying things he claimed not to remember the next day. Once, in the middle of an argument, he said something that stopped her. He said, "You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I've done." She asked him what he meant. He said nothing. He left the room. She did not ask again. By 2014, the marriage between Callan and Rebecca was deteriorating. She moved out in March, citing irreconcilable differences. She did not tell anyone what he had said that night, not then, but she remembered. She carried it with her, a splinter lodged beneath the skin, small but impossible to ignore. Emily turned 16 in 2014. She had grown into a quiet, watchful young woman, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. She kept a journal, pages and pages filled with her handwriting, thoughts and questions she did not share with anyone. In September of that year, she wrote something that would later become evidence. She wrote, "I think I know what happened to Mom. I think I have always known. I just didn't want to believe it." On a Friday afternoon in October 2014, Emily stayed after school to talk to her guidance counselor, a woman named Patricia Lawson who had worked at Marshfield High School for 15 years. Emily sat in the small office, her hands folded in her lap, and said she needed to tell someone something. Patricia listened. What Emily said that day would reopen a case that had been cold for nearly 5 years. Part 4. The Revelation. Emily Huston told Patricia Lawson that she remembered the night before her mother disappeared. She said she had been in bed, not quite asleep, when she heard her parents arguing. She said the argument had been loud, louder than usual, and she had gotten up and crept to the top of the stairs to listen. She said she heard her father's voice, low and hard, saying things she could not fully make out. She heard her mother crying. She heard something break, maybe a glass or a plate. Then she heard her father say, "If you leave, you'll regret it." Emily said she went back to bed. She said she fell asleep. The next morning, her mother was gone. Patricia Lawson contacted the Coos County Sheriff's Office immediately. Detective Sarah Winters, who had worked on the original investigation, met with Emily the following week. Emily repeated her account. She said she had not mentioned it before because she had been 11 years old, scared, unsure of what it meant. She said she had convinced herself she had imagined it or misunderstood. But as she got older, the memory became clearer. She said she could not keep it to herself anymore. Detective Winters reopened the case in November 2014. She reviewed every piece of evidence, every interview, every report. She requested additional forensic analysis on Jennifer's car. She contacted the FBI for assistance. She interviewed Rebecca Thorne, who reluctantly shared what Callan had said during their argument. "You don't know what I've done." Taken alone, the statement was ambiguous. Taken with Emily's testimony, it became something else. In January 2015, investigators obtained a warrant to search Callan Huston's property in Coos Bay. They brought cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and a forensic team. They searched for 3 days. On the 3rd day, in a wooded area approximately 2 miles from the house, the dogs alerted. Investigators began to dig. 6 feet down, they found remains. Dental records confirmed the identity: Jennifer Marie Huston. The autopsy revealed cause of death as blunt force trauma to the head. The remains were partially decomposed, but forensic pathologists determined that Jennifer had been deceased since approximately December 2009. The location of the remains was significant. The wooded area was accessible by a dirt road that connected to the highway Callan would have taken to work on the morning Jennifer disappeared. The timeline fit. The mileage fit. Everything fit. Callan Huston was arrested on February 3, 2015 at his workplace in North Bend. Deputies arrived just after noon. Callan was on a job site framing a new house. When they told him he was under arrest for the murder of Jennifer Huston, he did not react. He did not ask why. He did not protest his innocence. He simply put down his tools and held out his wrists for the handcuffs. One deputy later said Callan looked almost relieved, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The arrest shocked the community. Some people had suspected Callan all along, but others had defended him, believed in his innocence, sympathized with what they thought was his loss. The revelation split the town. Arguments broke out at coffee shops and grocery stores. Families stopped speaking to each other. The trial became a focal point, A reckoning not just for Callan Huston, but for everyone who had looked the other way, who had chosen to believe the easier story. The prosecution built its case methodically. They presented Emily's testimony, describing the argument she had overheard. They presented Rebecca Thorne's testimony, recounting Callan's admission. They presented forensic evidence showing that Jennifer's remains had been buried shortly after her death, that the location was consistent with Callan's movements on the day she disappeared. They presented phone records showing that Callan had called Jennifer's cell phone repeatedly after she was already dead, a performance designed to create the appearance of concern. They presented testimony from neighbors who had heard arguments between Callan and Jennifer in the weeks before her death, arguments about money, about Callan's drinking, about Jennifer's desire to leave. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial. They argued that Emily's memory was unreliable, that she had been a child, that memories could be distorted by time and suggestion. They argued that Rebecca Thorne's testimony was vague, that Callan's statement could have meant anything. They argued that the forensic evidence did not definitively prove Callan had buried the body, only that the body had been buried. They called character witnesses who described Callan as a loving father, a hardworking man, someone incapable of violence. Clear's throat. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On March 27, 2015, they returned a verdict, guilty of second-degree murder. Callan Huston was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. He showed no emotion as the sentence was read. He did not look at his children who sat in the courtroom with their grandmother. He did not speak. In the months that followed, details continued to emerge. Investigators learned that Callan had taken out a life insurance policy on Jennifer 6 months before her death, a policy worth $200,000. They learned that he had been having an affair with a woman in Cockwell, a relationship that had ended shortly before Jennifer disappeared. They learned that Jennifer had confided in a friend that she was planning to file for divorce, that she was afraid of how Callan would react. All of it painted a picture of a man who had decided that if he could not control his wife, he would eliminate her. Emily and Michael Huston were placed in the custody of their grandmother. They moved to Portland, away from Bandon, away from the blue house on Maple Street, away from the memories that had defined their childhood. Emily graduated from high school in 2016. She spoke at her mother's memorial service, her voice steady, her words chosen carefully. She said her mother had been kind and patient and strong. She said her mother deserved to be remembered. She said she hoped that, by speaking the truth, she had given her mother the justice she had been denied for so long. Closing. The case of Jennifer Huston is a reminder that justice, when it comes, often comes quietly, carried on the voices of those who were too afraid to speak before. It is a story about the weight of silence and the courage it takes to break it. It is a story about a community that wanted to believe the best and learned, too late, that sometimes the truth is uglier than anyone imagined. Jennifer Huston was 38 years old when she died. She loved her children. She worked hard. She tried to leave. She did not make it. Her story matters because she mattered, and because somewhere someone else is living in the same silence, waiting for the moment when they can finally speak. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.